Parashat Bamidbar. On the face of it, the connection between the parasha and the haftara Bamidbar are slim. The first has to do with demography. Bamidbar begins with a census of the people. The haftara begins with a vision of Hosea, of a time when the number of the children of Israel will be like the sand of the seashore, which cannot be measured or numbered. There was a time that Israel could be counted. The day will come when they will be countless. That is one contrast between the future and the past. The second goes deeper. The parasha and the book that bears its name are called Bamidbar, meaning in the wilderness. The book is about the wilderness years, physical and spiritual, a time of wandering and eternal conflict. Hosea, however, foresees a time when God will bring the people back to the desert and there enact a second honeymoon. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. There she will respond as in the days of her youth, as in the day she came out of Egypt. What gives the haftara a special resonance is the fact that Bamidbar is almost always read on the Shabbat preceding Shavuot, the festival of the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. The fact that tradition chose this of all the prophetic passages tells us something deeply moving about how the Jewish people understood this festival and about the Torah itself as the living connection between God and his people. The story of Hosea is one of the strangest in the great chain of visionaries we call prophets. It is a story of marriage. The prophet married a woman called Gomer. He was deeply in love with her. We infer this because of all the prophets, Hosea is the most eloquent and passionate on the subject of love. Gomer, however, proved unfaithful. She left home and had a series of lovers and was serially unfaithful and eventually forced to sell herself to slavery. Yet Hosea, caught between anger and tender longing, found that he could not relinquish his love for her. In a flash of prophetic insight, God leads him to understand that his own personal experience mirrors that between God and the Israelites. He had rescued them from slavery, but the people proved faithless. They worshipped other gods. They were promiscuous in their spiritual attachments. By rights, says God, I should have abandoned them. I should have called them like the prophet called his third son, Lo Ami, you're not my people. Yet God's love is inextinguishable. He too cannot let go. Whatever the people's sins, he will bring them back to the desert, the scene of their first love, and their marriage will be renewed. The Talmud gives an incredible account of the dialogue between God and Hosea, the unwritten story before the first chapter of the book. The Holy One, blessed be He, says to Hosea, your children have sinned. To this the prophet should have replied, they are your children, the children of your favored ones, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Be merciful to them. Not only does he not say this, but what he actually says is, Lord of the universe, the whole world is yours. Exchange them for another nation. The Holy One, blessed be He, says, what shall I do with this old man? I will let him go and marry a prostitute and have children by her. Then I will tell him to send her away. If he can, then I too will send Israel away. There are few more telling passages in the whole rabbinic literature. If I were to summarize it, I would say, who is a leader of the Jewish people? Only one who loves the Jewish people. Reading the prophetic literature, it is easy to see the prophet as social critics. They see the people's faults. They speak them aloud, and the message is often negative, foretelling disaster. But the Talmud is telling us that such a view is superficial and misses the essential point. The prophets loved their people. They spoke out not of condemnation, but from the depth of deep desire. They knew that Israel was capable and had been summoned to great things. They never criticized it in order to distance themselves, to set themselves above or apart. They spoke in love, God's love. That's why in Israel's darkest nights, the prophets always had a message of hope. There's one verse in the haftara that deserves special attention. God speaks of a future time where he will bring his people back they once visited. The desert was the first place they loved, and they will renew their relationship. On that day, declares the Lord, you will call me my husband. You will no longer call me my master. The resonance of this sentence are impossible to capture in translation. The key words in Hebrew are ish and baal. They can both mean husband. Hosea is pointing to two kinds of marital relationships and two kinds of culture. One is signaled by the word Baal, which also names the Canaanite god. Baal, a central figure in the Near Eastern pantheon, was a storm god of lightning and fertility, the power that impregnates the land. Hosea, punning on the name, hints at a world shaped by worship of power and desire. It is a world without loyalty, where relationships are casual, where people are used and discarded. A marriage defined by a Baal is one of dominance. Women are owned, not honored. The word Baal also means owner. Against this, Hosea offers another vision. Here, his device is not a pun, but a quotation. Using Ish for the relationship between God and his people, he invokes Genesis, the first man seeing the first woman. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of men. Daringly, Hosea suggests that the making of woman from man mirrors the creation of humanity from God. First separation, then union, but now as two distinct persons who respect each other's integrity. What binds them is fidelity and trust. How we understand the giving of the Torah depends on how we see the relationship between God and his people he chose to be special witnesses on earth. Inevitably, the language of Judaism, when it speaks of God, is metaphorical. The infinite cannot be compressed to finite categories. The metaphors prophets use are many. God is, among other things, artist, creator, king, master, warrior, shepherd, judge, teacher, redeemer, and father. From the point of view of God as a king, the Torah is a code of laws. A code of laws he ordains for the people. He rules. From the perspective of God as a father and teacher, it represents instructions he gives his children as to how they should best live. Adopting the image of God as an artist creator, Jewish mystics throughout the ages saw the Torah as the architecture of the universe, the deep structure of existence. Of all the metaphors, the loveliest and the most intimate is that of God as a husband, with Israel as his bride. Isaiah says, "For your maker is your husband, the Lord Almighty is his name." Likewise, Jeremiah, "Return, faithless people, declares the Lord, for I am your husband." Ezekiel describes the covenant itself in marital terms. "Later I passed by, and when I looked at you and saw you, you were old enough for love. I spread the corner of my garment over you and covered your nakedness. I gave my solemn oath into a covenant with you, declares the Lord, and you became mine." From this perspective, the Torah is not only law or instruction, but a marriage contract, a gesture of love. Marriage is a covenant in which both parties pledge themselves to one another, to be loyal, steadfast, to stay together through difficult times, as well as the good, and to achieve together when neither can achieve alone. There are laws of marriage which define responsibilities, but marriage itself is more than a set of obligations and rights, suffused with love and translated into law. That, according to this metaphor, is what the Sinai event was about. The supreme poet of this vision is Hosea. By reading his haftara before Shavuot, we affirm that God was not declaring power or dominance, what Baal implies, but love. This is why it's no accident that the words in which the haftara ends, among the most beautiful in the entire religious literature, are the words Jewish men recite every weekday morning as they wind the strap of tefillin like a wedding ring around their finger, renewing their daily marriage contract of Sinai. "I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and justice, love and compassion. I will betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you will know God." What non-Jews and sometimes Jews fail to appreciate is how, in Judaism, Torah represents law as love and love as law. Torah is not just revealed legislation, it represents God's faith in our ancestors. He entrusted them with the creation of society that would become a home for his presence and an example to the world. Shabbat Shalom.